Hi, good morning, good afternoon, probably for most of you. Thank you for joining us today for this demo slash webinar of LimeLyte Entity Manager. We've only got 30 minutes today, so it's quite a short session. So I'm not going to wait for people to join. We are recording this and we will be sending this out, sending out the recording afterwards. So if anyone missed anything, you should be able to catch up. Can do some quick introductions. I'm Sam Thomas. I'm the Oracle practice commercial lead at Innovate Tax. I've been with Innovate for about 8-9 years now. I'm now based in the US, heading up our kind of building out our footprint over here. But typically, any of our clients that have an Oracle ERP probably know who I am. And I brought with me Connor. Connor, just say hello quickly.
Hi, I'm Connor. I'm a functional consultant here at Innovate for the last 5-ish years, and I've been heavily involved in the creation of this entity manager tool.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Connor. And Connor's going to take us through, show us some of the kind of features of the product in the demo. Before we do that, I'm going to just do a couple of slides to set the scene, a little bit about Innovate, a little bit about the product, some of its functionality, and also why we built it, and some of the problems that we think that it's designed to solve for businesses. And then we'll head into the demo, and Connor's going to show you some of the different pieces of functionality that it has. So bit of background. I imagine most of you know who we are, but we're, for those that don't, we're a tax technology company. We focus purely on indirect taxes, helping businesses automate global indirect tax determination and tax compliance as well through different technology. Historically, we started in the Oracle space, so we have an Oracle-based automated tax solution. But more recently, we now partner with some of the biggest tax technology providers on the market. So we offer implementation services for tax determination, for compliance, exemption management solutions, and e-invoicing, which we're seeing a lot of at the moment because of the recent mandates, which actually this product ties into as well quite nicely. And we also build our own products as well. So we're not just a solutions and implementation business. We actually do build our own software, and we're going to show you LimeLyte Entity Manager today, which is one of the products that we've built to help businesses manage compliance. So LimeLyte Entity Manager is a real-time bulk TRN, tax registration number validation tool that has lots of functionality, but ultimately it's designed to help global enterprise level businesses manage and maintain tax registration number data. It's real time. Um, Advise in the EU, HMRC in the UK, but also in different portals across the world as well, where tax authorities allow you to connect. So we can do real-time validation checks against their databases. It's got a full audit trail. So every time you do these checks within the system, we retain that information. So if you do ever get audited, you can prove that you're making these checks. You have the full trail visibility of when the checks were made, any changes you make to the data. So it gives you a nice place, a central place to manage all of this data. And you can do everything en masse and in bulk, right? So if you have, potentially hundreds of thousands of customers, supplier records that you need to maintain and check, you can put all of that data into the tool, and it will automatically run that through, and also reprocess that data. I think periodically, every 3 months is this kind of default setting. We'll recheck that data for you because, as we know, this data is not static. Things change over time. So I'm going to talk, before I hand over to Connor and kind of jump into the demo, I want to talk about some of the problems, pains that we see for the types of businesses that we work with, and what problems this tool is designed to solve. So first of all, why is managing tax registration numbers a problem for enterprises? I mean, so first of all, it's a legal requirement in a lot of jurisdictions to make sure that you're doing these checks, making sure that the information is valid. But over the few years of selling this tool, we have seen that not every business has robust processes in place to manage this particular problem. Even some of the biggest brands in the world. And as I said, this could be due to a lack of robust processes, or historically never having to manage this problem. Could be that the data is held in multiple different systems that don't talk to each other and don't have the kind of technology infrastructure to manage this. So actually, on scale, this is a big headache for businesses. And then when we think about whose responsibility the data is, ultimately, tax professionals are responsible for compliance, but the ownership of the actual data is generally quite fragmented. So VAT numbers or tax registration numbers are actually captured and maintained by multiple different teams. So that could happen at the onboarding stage when you're actually inputting master data into the system. Could be done by accounts payable, by procurement, even by IT. And some businesses also have master data teams to manage this. But no clear accountability for who actually is responsible and owns this data. And one thing, and this isn't just true of tax registration number data, this is true of all kind of VAT data really, is that tax professionals are responsible for the end product, but they don't necessarily have control over that data before it gets to them. So actually that responsibility and ownership is a key problem that we see across large multinational businesses. And how to manage that effectively, and is that difficult? So we've seen, a lot of businesses still do this manually and manage this data manually. And when you're looking at, you have a global footprint, large scale, managing that, especially because you should be continually rechecking and validating this data, doing that manually is a really difficult problem. And being able to do that without some kind of technology to help is a bit of a headache. I've even had conversations with actually a number of different businesses where they've told me they manage this problem periodically when they get temps to come in to do work experience, where they'll give them a spreadsheet and they'll manually go one by one onto the VISE network and check the data that way. And obviously that's not a sustainable kind of robust process, apart from it potentially putting off some young person from ever wanting to work in an office again. But yeah, to do this effectively, we really think you need some kind of technology to help with that. And then in terms of the, what the kind of worst case scenario potentially of not doing this correctly, obviously that approach and a manual approach exposes you to lots of risk. People make mistakes, and ultimately you can get potentially fined for this if you're not doing this regularly. If you get audited and you can't prove that you're making these checks, there are financial penalties, even potentially denied VAT recovery, reputational damage, you name it. This is definitely something that you should be staying on top of. And with the rise of VIDA, so that's VAT in the digital age. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what that is, but there are, I think most people are aware now, there's a lot of mandates around VIDA, around e-invoicing, where you actually have to make sure that this data is accurate. So when you want to send your invoice, you have to make sure that VAT number is accurate on there. Because the tax authority may reject it before it even reaches the end customer. So there's a real level of scrutiny around this problem now, and actually having the VIDA legislation is making a lot of businesses realize that they really need to put some processes in place to manage this long term. And even just seeing a lot of gaps. So we're not going to talk about this today, but some of the conversations that I have quite regularly is about saying, well, we have to comply with these mandates, but we've never actually collected this data properly, and we've never actually, we know we've got gaps. How do we fill that? So we actually offer a service which we call Taxmaster, which we actually use this product to firstly highlight the gaps, show you where the gaps in data are, the discrepancies that you have between your source data versus what the tax authorities hold. And we also offer a service as well to go and fill that gap as well by reaching out to businesses, customers, suppliers to get that data back for you. But that's a separate conversation. I just wanted to mention it because we're seeing that quite regularly, especially around the kind of upcoming e-invoicing mandates. So what we're going to show you today, before I hand over to Connor, we are going to give you a quick overview of the platform itself. So the Entity Manager platform, we sell it as a SaaS product. So we're going to show you some of the functionality. There's a lot. It does a lot actually. So we don't have time to show you everything. We just want to give you a bit of a flavor of what the product does. So Connor's going to show you some of the features there, and then towards the end of the demo, we're going to show you our plugin. So this is actually where we've built a plugin to the ERP, and we're going to do a demo in our Oracle environment, because what we noticed where this often can cause a problem is actually when that data is input into the ERP in the first place by someone who's not necessarily aware of the importance of the accuracy of that data. So we've actually got a plugin directly into Oracle, and this can be implemented in different ERP systems as well, where remaining in the same master data screens, you can actually validate that data against the tax authority without having to navigate away from the screen, and that's an area we've actually seen quite a lot of issues for businesses. Is people just not doing those checks at that point when the data goes into the ERP system. And we can't demo this today, but we also have an API for this product, so we can actually connect it to multiple different systems via this API. So if that's of interest, we can have a separate conversation about that. Just wanted to mention that it is available. So bit of a whiz through, but want to hand over now to Connor, who's going to jump into the demo. Connor, I think it probably makes sense if we start at the kind of single check in the product, because we can kind of talk about a little bit some of the logic that's happening behind the scenes with the tool, because it is actually doing some funky kind of checks on the data before it even gets sent out to the tax authority. So yeah, without further ado, hand over to Connor. And yeah, Connor, thank you.
Thank you. Can you see my screen just to confirm before I get moving?
Yeah, we can see that.
Very cool. So welcome to Entity Manager. As mentioned, we're firstly going to look at the manual check, and then we're going to touch base on a few of the other elements with Entity Manager. But if we open it up here, what we can see is quite a straightforward interface for checking your tax registration number. So I'm just going to quickly go through a live example. So if you imagine you acquire your tax registration number, you simply put it into the full tax registration number field, click submit, and then Entity Manager will contact the appropriate API. And as we can see here, we have all the information returned in a quick fashion in regard to the check. So fortunately for Innovate Tax, our tax registration number is valid, and we can see all the relevant information around this particular check. One point to mention, we have this confirmation code here. So for some of the tax authority portals, they will actually provide a confirmation code, which is a code generated on their side for every check that's done, and this will act as an additional proof of check if you were ever audited. On top of that, though, we can see here we have the manual check history. So this is a indefinite historic list of all the checks that occur within this form. So what we found from feedback from our current users is previously having Entity Manager, their process for validating the tax registration numbers would be going to the appropriate portals online. So whether that's VIES or HMRC or any of the other ones, they would have to navigate there, do the check, take a screenshot, bring it back, save it on file. Quite a quick process, but if you're doing this multiple times, the time really does add up. So what we've got here is a single source area where you can do all of these checks and retain all the history. Worth mentioning as well, what we've got here is the format button. So we just like to highlight this in this part of the demo, because this is logic that is built into the upload process, which is really the sort of core element of the tool. So what we can see is I've just removed, add the file back. So with a lot of tax registration numbers, you can input this into your source system in a variety of different formats. However, when actually doing these checks on a lot of the portals, this essentially will confuse the system. So we have some unused characters in regard to the format requirements for the UK here. So if we had this disabled, for example, and try to run it through, we can see here the API has not been called because there's an issue with the format. So if we come over here, we can see that the format should be 9 digits long. However, with the format function enabled, the system will look at the particular tax registration number and remove any unused characters. So that allows a accurate API check and return of a proper validation. So we just like to highlight this because your source data can be held in a variety of different ways. And if it isn't set up in the correct format for a validation, then you'll get a lot of false positives in your return. So this is some logic built in so that you don't have to correct any of your data prior to uploading into the system.
And why, just could you give us a little quick example of why this might be better than using, say, the VISE network, for example, which is the European platform?
Yeah, so essentially, as you'd expect, it's all connected to the official tax authority portals. So it's really just about streamlining the process and making it a lot more efficient, saving the user having to navigate to all these different portals and then do whatever process they have their side in validating the tax registrations and recording the proof of check. So this is a single area that this can all be done and retained.
Right.
So,
And then what if you wanted to do that, if part of your process you were doing this with multiple different records at a time?
So we do have an option up here, which is I want to check more than one TRM, which allows you to input a longer list of tax registration numbers. So maybe you've got a new list of 10 customers, for example, that you're about to onboard, and you want to do quick checks prior to setting up in the system. You can copy and paste a list of them here, and it will perform in the same way. It will do the API checks and return all of the checks in this manual check history. However, that would be for smaller amounts of checks. For the real mass data of checking, I think it would be a good time to navigate over to the data upload section. So here we can see a few different tables of information. Just quickly going to touch on the data sources. So by design, Entity Manager has been created to work with any set of data from any sort of platform, ERP, you name it. So you may have in your business multiple platforms that you store all this sort of data on for various reasons. Entity Manager can actually handle this data from wherever it comes from, as long as it's in the required format of the upload sheet, which we'll have a look at here. So we have some different options here for different entity types, essentially. So if you want to do a more simple check, you can upload all your customers into a single spreadsheet. However, we have this advanced option here, which handles more complex data. So for example, customers with multiple registrations and sites. So we'll just have a quick look at what that spreadsheet may look like. We won't go into it in detail now. But it's laid out nice and simple with a few mandatory columns, but a lot of them are up to you if you want to populate them. They're not mandatory. So that's what you may expect to see on the upload sheet. And then just to go through the actual upload process, we won't do it on the demo for now, but it's a quick and smooth process. Essentially, you populate your data, you upload it into the system, and the system will actually identify to make sure those mandatory values are there. And then it will do the data tidy up in regard to where I mentioned the reformatting of tax registration numbers that sit outside of the required format. So where it is an audit tool, and obviously the data that goes in is essential that it's retained in its true form. Entity Manager will identify any tax registration numbers that are using unused characters, create an additional value against that particular record, and that's what will be sent off to the API for a check.
Is there a limit to that number in terms of how much data you can process?
So no realistic limit. We've crash tested this up into hundreds of thousands, so you can upload um, everyone you've got, I would imagine. Um, the only caveat of that is if you're uploading a lot of data, naturally there will be a sort of scattered process of the validation, and that's because of the limitations to how many calls can be sent to these various APIs. So on that, it's all automatic, so you haven't got to come back as a user and keep refreshing your data. This is for smaller handfuls of data and thousands. You would expect a pretty instant response, but when you're getting into lots and lots of data, there's naturally a slight processing delay.
Okay. So once you've uploaded the file and it's,
Yes.
processed that data through, can you show us, how would you check whether that data is good or bad or ugly? And, can you show us some of the errors that the tool is kind of highlighting?
Sure. So once the data is processed into Entity Manager, it will be assigned a category. This can be multiple categories depending on the sort of assessment of the quality of that data. And within the tool, there are lots of sections laid out for easier viewing. But for the sake of this demo, we're going to look into the issue management section because this is normally of interest. So this is a section where Entity Manager will essentially check the quality of your data, whether that's in its raw form or in a comparison to what's been returned by the authority. So today we're going to look at name mismatch and then format issues. So if we look into the name mismatch here, essentially the logic for this is the system will be checking your source data against the tax authority's data. So we can see we have imported company name and validated company name. So this is essentially checking for mismatches between the two. And we can see just down here, we've got our traffic light system, which allows the users within the tool to identify and mark a particular record, whether or not they determine they want this action. So everything will come through at amber to show that it's not been reviewed yet. But then we have the option to mark as green. So we can see here, imported company name, Innovate Tax, the validated company name, Innovate Tax Limited. So for the sake of this demo, we could say that's close enough. We don't really need to make any updates to that. However, you may see some which are pretty much the same, but you may want to align them more accurately. But the real power of this tool or this function is when you find that the imported company name is completely different to the validated company name. So we can see here, we have this imported company name compared to this validated company name. So of course, it goes without saying that this is an important issue with this particular record. So, these things can happen maybe when you're onboarding a particular customer, you copy paste the wrong tax registration number, they get mixed up, or something a bit more questionable is going on, and someone's handing up someone else's tax registration number in the hope it's only checked for validity rather than who it's valid for. And this is just a curated example rather than what's actually happened. But whilst we're here, I just want to highlight a couple of these icons here. So where Sam mentioned there's an audit functionality of the tool, this is quite an important part of the tool as well. So if we click on the squiggly line, we can see here we've got a row version 1 and 2. So the more you start using this tool and the more you start to identify and correct your issues with your data, on each subsequent upload, Entity Manager will identify the particular records that have had changes. And of course, they will make the update to that particular record, but they will retain the original state that particular record was in. And this is great for audit purposes. And one of our users actually said this saved them a lot of hassle because a particular record got updated and they weren't sure what it was prior to this. So we can see here, by the blue indicates what's changed. On the original upload, we see that there was an issue with the formatting of the tax registration number. And if we hover over, we can just see it should be 9 digits long. So these statuses will be specific to the particular country. Some countries may share this format logic, but other countries may have their own specific one. it will always tell you what the particular record is. So in theory, this has prompted me to go and see what might have happened on the creation of this particular customer, and I can see it's not 9 characters, it's 8. So I've gone to find the missing number. I've added it in the source system, and then when we've uploaded it again, the system's corrected this and it's verified the touch registration number. In addition to that, naturally, with a tool holding all your data, we have the pencil here, which will hold all of your entity details around that particular record. And what we can see if we scroll to the bottom is a comment section. So this was incorporated to streamline the sort of cooperation between co-workers. So for example, you may have someone who goes through this particular list and identifies all the records that need updating, and they can post as a comment against that record what needs to be done. And then once they finish that, instead of asking the user to come in and navigate around the tool, even though it's been designed to be easy to navigate, they can instead come in, download and send off a particular extract of that information, just to allow the streamlining of recording the data and the process of correction. Moving on.
Right. Yeah, we've only got 4 minutes left, and this is always going to be fairly tight. So I really want to make sure we can show the plugin. I don't know if I think you plan to show some of the format issues, but I guess I got one question. If you go through this data and you make the changes in the system, in your source system, and rerun that data, does it leave the system, or is it going to continue to show?
Yeah, so every upload you do, if there are any corrections to your data, Entity Manager will reassess and then reapply whatever status or category. So in theory, if you were to align all those company names, then they would be updated and removed from this particular section. So it'll only ever show you the ones in question.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe because of because of the time, if we flip over to just to show quickly the plugin, because I do think that functionality is really useful. And we might not have time for questions at the end, but I'm trying to answer questions at the same time. We're getting quite a lot in the chat, so if there's anything we can't get to, we'll follow up after the session.
Sounds good. So here we are. I've just opened up, just as preparation, a customer record within our demo environment. And what we can see here sticking out like a sore thumb is the Verify TRN button. So this is configured and applied to the sections within the tool around your parties that has a registration number. What we can see is this is connecting to Entity Manager and essentially working in the same way as that manual check. So we've done a check here, verified the TRN. It's done the call and it's come back to say it's verified. So just quickly, let's say, for example, I made the same mistake and missed a number on the tax registration number. We do a call now, not been validated, and then we can see down here the reason why the TRN should be 9 seconds long. So an example for this, if we move back into Entity Manager, similar with the manual check history, if we look up in the burger, we've got plugin check history. So they are connected, the plugin and the tool, and this will work in the same way as showing you the checks that have occurred within your source environment indefinitely. So you've got a nice audit trail of that there as well. So you don't need to worry about having to provide proof of check because it's all being stored within Entity Manager as well. But that's the plugin, very straightforward.
Yeah, and the reason for the plugin is because, as I said before, getting the data right and making sure it's validated at the point it goes into your ERP system is really key. So at least you start with accurate data, and then once it goes into the product, it will revalidate it and make sure you maintain that throughout time. Obviously, we've shown you the plugin in Oracle Cloud. We have it available for Oracle R12 as well, and it's also possible to implement in different platforms such as Salesforce, SAP, etc., etc. So if you use multiple systems, because we know this data is stored in many different places, we should be able to help you. the time is up, and we've had a few questions in the chat, and we will respond to them. I've had a couple of questions around which countries this works for, and where the data is validated versus verified. So we'll follow up with that information as well. If and if there are specific countries that you're looking to manage this problem in, just let us know as well, and we can talk you through it. But hopefully, it was very much a quick run through of the tool and what it does, just to give you a little flavor. If you do want to follow up with a specific demo to look through all of the different functionality, because it's doing a lot more than what we showed you, absolutely reach out, and we'd be happy to set something up. And if you're looking at e-invoicing and this is part of that general, we know we've got to do something with this data, happy to have a conversation on what we're doing around e-invoicing and helping businesses prepare, because a lot of the problems we're seeing, some of the headaches with the invoicing implementations, is actually on the data side in the source systems, and making sure that that data is accurate in the first place to comply with that legislation. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. As I said, we'll follow up with any other questions separately. But yeah, thanks for joining, and please reach out if you want to go into more detail on this.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Connor.